Hi. My name is Calven. Yeah, that's with AV like velvet, not like the underwear. Don't ask. My mom had a thing for vintage novels and moonstone crystals. You could say I was born into sensitivity. I never considered myself the kind of guy women fall hard for. I'm more of a steady presence type, the one who remembers anniversaries without checking Facebook and loads the dishwasher the way she likes. I work in municipal records, which basically means I scan, store, and alphabetize people's forgotten paperwork. It's not thrilling, but it's mine. So when I met Dahlia, even her name was too beautiful for me. I didn't think I had a shot. I met her at a community poetry night I went to by accident. I was supposed to be picking up building permits for work, but the coffee shop was double booked, and there she was, standing on a small stage, reading something about moons and mouths and regret. I didn't understand half of it. But I remember thinking, if someone like her ever spoke to me, I'd listen even when I didn't get the words. 3 years later, she was mine. I proposed in the middle of a small bookstore in Vermont on a foggy November morning. She said yes like she was waiting to say it all her life. Or maybe she just liked the ring. It was vintage too, a little opal set in gold. My mother's, actually. It cost me nothing financially, but everything emotionally. My dad gave it to my mom before he disappeared. Our marriage started quietly. No fireworks, no big shouting matches, no dramatic in-laws. I thought that was a good sign. Quiet meant peace. Quiet meant it was working. But quiet also means you don't hear what's breaking until it's already broken. I didn't notice it at first. The longer showers. The lipstick she didn't wear for me. The sudden urge to repaint the living room every 2 months. I just assumed she was evolving, becoming more of herself. Isn't that what you're supposed to support? Then she stopped calling me Calven. She started calling me hey or you. I told myself it was just habit. People settle into patterns. But patterns can turn into cages, and I didn't see the bars forming. The day everything snapped, I'd taken the afternoon off. I wanted to surprise her, nothing dramatic, just flowers and that dumb, overly sweet tea she likes from the Korean place across town. She'd had a hard week, or so I thought, and I just wanted to do something small to remind her I still paid attention. I stepped into her house. Quiet. No TV. No music. Just murmurs. I followed the sound down the hallway. The bedroom door was open. And that's when I saw him. I don't know his name. He had that generic gym trainer build and a voice like a podcast host. He was half-dressed, sitting on my side of the bed, smirking like he lived there. Dahlia was fully clothed, pacing in front of him, hands flying like she was explaining something to a therapist. And then she saw me. She didn't scream. She didn't even flinch. She just turned, looked at me, and said, "You're a failure, Calven. You always have been. You think doing dishes and remembering birthdays makes you a man? Look at you. You still believe this house is yours." I looked at her. Really looked. The ring I gave her, my mother's ring, was still on her finger. I noticed it more than I noticed her. I said nothing. I let her finish her speech, all of it. Every word. She had clearly rehearsed. Maybe not for me, but for him. I was just the backdrop. And when she was done, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just quietly began to strip it all away. Not my clothes, no. The life I had built around her. And that was the first time I realized if she could perform in front of him, I could perform too. But on my own stage. And I had already written the final act. I walked past her without saying a word. Past him too, he chuckled under his breath like he'd just watched the punchline of a sitcom. I didn't even give him a glance. I went straight to the hall closet. Grabbed the old tote where we kept the emergency docs, passports, title deeds, bank account folders, all of it. I carried it to the kitchen and placed it on the table. She followed me in, annoyed now, like I was somehow interrupting her little theater show. "Are you seriously doing this right now?" she scoffed, arms crossed. "In front of him?" I said nothing. I opened the tote, pulled out the folder marked Joint Assets. I flipped past the mortgage, past the car registration, until I found the bank statements. There, right there, was the number I knew by heart. The savings account, the one she didn't know I'd opened in my name alone when she started buying business course packages from her phone and couldn't explain what they were for. "You think you're the smart one, Dahlia," I finally said, keeping my voice calm. "But I've been quiet, not blind." Her expression changed. Not panic, not yet, but the discomfort of someone realizing their script was no longer the only one being read aloud. "I let you talk," I continued. "You wanted to shame me in front of him? Fine. But now I'll show you what a failure does with everything he's been collecting." That's when I placed the key on the table. Not house keys. Storage unit keys. One in my name. Opened a month ago. She frowned. "What is this?" "I moved the important stuff 2 weeks ago," I said. The photos of my dad, the only good TV, my signed vinyls, my books, my grandmother's dishes. All of it. Gone. Out. This place is empty except for you, him, and the ring you're about to lose. Now he stood up. Finally. He stepped forward like he was going to puff his chest or say something macho. I turned to him slowly. Don't, I said quietly. You weren't even part of the plan. You're just filler in someone else's story. He paused, not sure if I was joking or threatening. I wasn't doing either. I was just tired. Tired in a way that settled into my ribs. Dahlia still hadn't moved. She looked confused. A little pale. I don't get it, she muttered. You're just walking away? I smiled, but not the happy kind. The kind people give when they're done fighting for something that never fought back. No, I replied. I'm doing something better. I'm leaving you the stage. You wanted the spotlight so badly. It's yours. All of it. I just took the script and rewrote the ending. I grabbed the small backpack I'd left by the door earlier, already packed with my laptop, wallet, a toothbrush, and a clean change of clothes. She didn't even notice it when I came in. And then I left. I walked out of the house I'd paid for, past the porch she once said felt like home, and into the most peaceful silence I'd ever heard. But I wasn't done. Because you can strip away a lot of things: furniture, clothes, memories. But what I was about to strip away next, she never saw it coming. And honestly, neither did I. The motel I checked into that night was nothing special. A gray building off the side of Route 18 with vending machines older than my marriage and a buzzing neon vacancy sign that blinked like it had given up years ago. But it was quiet. And quiet, for once, felt earned. I didn't cry. That's something people always assume, that when your life implodes, you'll collapse, sobbing, into a bathroom mirror. But the real betrayal doesn't come with fireworks. It's quieter. Like someone turned the volume down on your soul. I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling for a long time. The ring, my mother's ring, was still there in my mind. Not on her hand anymore. I imagined it left behind in the sink or slipped off when I walked out. I hoped she kept it. Not as a keepsake, but as a weight. I didn't sleep much. Just closed my eyes and let the silence speak. The next morning, I drove to a coffee shop I hadn't visited in years, the kind of place that still played vinyl records and served everything in mismatched ceramic mugs. I used to bring Dahlia there before she outgrew it. That's what she said one night when I suggested it again. I'm not 25 anymore, Calven. I've evolved. Funny how people use the word evolved when they mean outgrew you. I ordered my usual black coffee with 2 sugars and a cranberry muffin and sat in the far booth. I pulled out my laptop and began going through everything. Not revenge plans. Not messages. Not social media. Just the details. I canceled her access to the joint streaming accounts. She'd mocked me for keeping the passwords written in a little notebook. Now that notebook was power. I removed her name from the auto insurance. She never even drove anymore. Her friend had a nicer car. I logged into the bank and transferred my personal savings into a new account I'd opened 3 weeks earlier, the day I saw that odd Uber charge from across town, the one she said was a glitch. It wasn't revenge. It was repair. I emailed my landlord, not for the house but the storage unit. I asked him to extend the contract for 6 months and offered to pay the full amount up front. Personal transition, I wrote in the subject line. He replied within the hour, handled. Take care, man. I don't think I even looked in a mirror that day. I didn't need to. I already knew who was staring back, a man who'd stopped pretending. That night, I checked into a better motel, a place with clean towels and windows that didn't rattle when the wind hit. I unpacked one book, East of Eden. My father had underlined a line in it once, and now that you don't have to be perfect, you can be good. I wasn't trying to be good. I was just trying to be real. The only thing I hadn't figured out was how I'd tell people. My brother, who always warned me about her. My coworker Eleanor, who once saw Dahlia flirting with a guy at a conference and never brought it up again. Even my boss, who would ask questions when I started coming in earlier, staying later, never talking about my wife. The final message I sent that night was to Dahlia. Just a few words. Strip the house if you want. It's just furniture. But I stripped away the parts that mattered. And now you're the one left standing in an empty room. I didn't expect a reply. I didn't get one. But 2 hours later, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. Then I answered. And what I heard on the other end was not her voice, but his. And he was crying. At first, I thought I misheard. Static crackled through the cheap motel signal, and for a second, I assumed it was Dahlia faking tears, trying a new angle. But the voice was deeper, shakier, and it kept repeating my name like it was a life preserver. Calven. Calven, man, listen, I didn't know. I didn't know it was like that. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, staring out the grimy motel window at the blinking streetlight that never fully turned green. Part of me wanted to hang up. Part of me wanted to let him talk, to hear what betrayal sounded like from the inside. I didn't say a word. Let him fill the silence. She said you didn't care about her anymore, he went on, voice cracking, desperate now. She said you were just dead weight, that she had to move on. I swear, man, I wouldn't have touched her if I knew you were still trying. Still trying. Funny phrase. Like marriage is some game you just stop playing when it's boring. He kept rambling, coughing, muttering half-sentences about mistakes and regrets, but I wasn't really listening anymore. I was staring at the laminated motel desk, my thumb rubbing a groove into the edge without realizing it. What hit me hardest wasn't that he was sorry. It was that he thought I still wanted her. That somewhere in this mess he believed I was fighting for a woman who had already packed up her loyalty and shipped it to someone else's doorstep. Finally, after what felt like hours, I cut him off. She chose, I said quietly. You don't have to cry about it. He sniffled like a kid. Man, I don't want her anymore. After what she said about you and what she said about me after you left, dude, she's sick. I leaned back in the chair. The ceiling fan spun lazily above me, blades caked with dust. What did she say about you? I asked, even though I already knew the answer in my gut. There was a pause. Long and ugly. She told her friends, he said slowly, that she was using me. That I was just the exit ramp off her dead-end marriage. She said once you were out of the picture, she'd find someone better. Someone real. I closed my eyes. Not out of heartbreak. Out of exhaustion. She was never going to be satisfied, not with me, not with him, not with the next poor fool standing in line. Some people don't want happiness, they want the rush of breaking things they don't know how to build. I'm sorry, man, he said again, softer now. I'm so sorry. I hung up without answering. Not out of cruelty. Out of mercy. For him. For me. For the last piece of myself that still thought closure came from other people. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry anymore. There's a kind of sadness that settles deeper than rage, the kind that feels like an old coat you forgot you were wearing until it starts to rain. The next morning, I packed up my things and checked out of the motel. I didn't even leave a note on the bed like I used to do on family trips when I was a kid, thanks for everything, scribbled on hotel stationery. There was nothing to thank here. Only something to finish. Because I wasn't going back to that house. And Dahlia wasn't going to find closure in another man's arms. She was going to find it exactly where she left it. In the ruins she thought she'd escaped. And I was going to make sure she faced it alone. I didn't have a grand plan when I pulled out of the motel parking lot. No revenge fantasy. No dreams of some triumphant comeback. Just a simple thought, steady and heavy like a stone, finish it. First, I drove to the hardware store on 9th and Roosevelt, the same one where I bought paint for the kitchen ceiling Dahlia swore she loved, right before she said it felt too heavy. I bought a padlock and a set of large moving boxes. Paid cash. No record. No questions. Then I drove home. I call it home out of habit, not because it felt like one anymore. Homes are built with laughter and forgiveness and sleepy Sunday mornings when no one bothers to check their phones. This was just a shell now, a hollowed-out replica of the life I thought we were living. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw her car still parked outside. Good. I wanted her to be there. I unlocked the door and walked in without knocking. The house smelled different, like musky cologne and leftover takeout. My stomach turned, but I kept my face still. I heard music playing faintly upstairs. Some generic pop song she once said was too cheesy when I put it on during a road trip. She didn't even notice I was there. For a minute I just stood in the doorway looking at everything. The photos still hung on the walls, the fake smiles at weddings, the forced holiday cards, the cheap souvenirs from trips where we barely spoke by the third day. It hit me hard and sudden, I wasn't mourning the life we had. I was mourning the fantasy I thought was real. I walked into the living room. Grabbed the nearest photo off the mantel, the one where she's smiling wide in front of the Grand Canyon, my arm awkwardly draped over her shoulders. I flipped it over. On the back, in my handwriting, were the words, "First real adventure together. Forever to go." Forever lasted exactly 7 years and 4 months after that photo. I dropped it into the nearest box without ceremony. I packed mechanically, not our whole lives, just mine. My childhood books she never bothered to touch. My grandfather's pocket watch she once said smelled like old metal. The wool throw blanket I loved but she kept hiding in the guest room closet because it clashed with the aesthetic. Item after item, memory after memory, anything that still belonged to me, anything that still felt clean. The rest I left. The couch we bought together when she promised she wanted simple things? Left. The fancy wine glasses she insisted we needed for hosting parties we never threw? Left. The embroidered pillow she had custom-made that read, "Our happy place?" Definitely left. By the time I finished, it was nearly sunset. The music upstairs had stopped. I didn't hear her moving around. For all I knew, she was asleep or tangled up with someone else. Didn't matter anymore. I loaded the boxes into my truck. I walked back to the door. I slipped the new padlock through the front door handles, both of them, and clicked it shut. I left my copy of the house key hanging there on a bright red ribbon, the same ribbon I used to wrap her first birthday gift for me. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. On the front step, I left a handwritten note on the back of an old electric bill. "You said this house was yours. Now it is. Completely. Good luck with it. Simple. Final. No anger. No bitterness. Just truth." When I drove away, I didn't look back. Not because I was strong, but because I was finally tired of staring at a place that never loved me back. Somewhere in the distance, my phone buzzed again. I ignored it. I already knew what the texts would say: confusion, desperation, bargaining. I wasn't interested in reading a story where I was no longer even a character, just a footnote. I had my own story to finish. And for the first time in years, I wasn't writing it for her. I was writing it for me. The next few days blurred together in a haze of cheap motel coffee and back roads I barely remembered driving down. I didn't have a destination. Just movement. Forward, always forward, even if it was only by inches. I turned off my phone after the first night. I couldn't bear to see the notifications anymore, her texts swinging between apology, anger, and begging, each one sounding more like a performance than the last. It was clear Dahlia wasn't really trying to reach me, she was trying to reach a version of herself she could still live with. That wasn't my problem anymore. I found a small cabin on the edge of a sleepy town called Fair Hollow, the kind of place where nobody cared who you were as long as you paid cash and didn't block the view of the lake. The owner, an old man named Lester, handed me the keys without a single question. "People come here to disappear," he said with a shrug. "Stay as long as you need." For the first time in years, I breathed without feeling like the air belonged to someone else. I spent my days chopping wood, drinking bad diner coffee, and reading battered books left behind by other people who had needed to vanish for a while. I didn't check my email. I didn't look at social media. I didn't wonder what Dahlia was doing. But she wasn't done with me. About a week after I left the city behind, Lester knocked on my cabin door one afternoon. He stood there, holding an envelope, looking uncomfortable. "Some lady came by," he said. Pretty frantic. "Asked if anyone matching your description checked in." I told her I didn't know. He handed me the envelope. No stamp, no address, just my name scrawled in her familiar, looping handwriting. Inside, a single page. "I'm sorry. I need you to come home. Please." I realize now it was a mistake. "We can fix this. You're my real home. I love you, Calven. Please come back." I sat down heavily on the porch steps, the paper trembling between my fingers, though not from anger or sadness. It was something colder now. Something final. Dahlia didn't miss me. She missed the role I played. She missed the man who filled the empty space beside her at weddings. The man who made excuses when she forgot friends' birthdays, who laughed too loudly at her bad jokes, who bought her flowers when she didn't bother to say thank you. She missed the audience, not the person. And for the first time, staring at that desperate letter, I didn't feel a single thread pulling me back. I let the letter fall onto the porch and watched as the wind carried it away, spinning like some lost bird too tired to find its flock. That night, I sat by the lake, watching the stars ripple across the black water. It was cold enough that my breath came out in clouds. I wrapped the old wool blanket, the one she used to hide, around my shoulders and let myself feel everything I had been pushing down for weeks. The grief, the humiliation, the relief. I cried for the man I had been, the one who thought loyalty was the same thing as love. I cried for the wasted years, the wasted apologies, the wasted prayers whispered into pillows while she slept beside me, dreaming of other arms. And then, when the tears dried, I made a quiet vow. I would never again chase someone who ran from themselves. I wasn't anyone's safety net. I wasn't anyone's background noise. I was done being half-loved. In the reflection on the water, under the bruised purple sky, I didn't see a failure staring back. I saw a man who survived loving someone who didn't know how to stay. And I knew, deep in my bones, that whatever came next would belong to me, and me alone. I stayed in Fair Hollow longer than I ever planned. Days bled into nights without anyone needing anything from me. No awkward silences at dinner tables. No careful explanations of why I wasn't enough. No pretending. It's strange how little you actually need when you stop performing for someone else's approval. A good pair of boots. Hot coffee in the morning. Somewhere you can hear your own heartbeat without shame. I spent my mornings hiking the trails behind the cabin, breathing air so clean it almost hurt. Some days, I'd just sit by the water with an old notebook, scribbling thoughts that didn't have to make sense to anyone but me. I wasn't trying to be poetic. I wasn't trying to be wise. I was just trying to be honest, something I hadn't done in years. At night, Lester would sometimes bring over leftovers from the diner. Meatloaf, pie, things made with rough hands and soft hearts. We didn't talk much. He'd just sit on the porch, smoking a battered pipe, while I listened to the crickets hum. It was the most peaceful company I'd ever known. I didn't think about Dahlia much after that first week. Not because the memories weren't there. They were. They surfaced at odd moments. The way she used to laugh at dumb jokes, or how her hand always found mine in crowded rooms. But the memories didn't have claws anymore. They were just echoes, harmless if you didn't chase them. Still, every so often, curiosity poked at me. One evening, after a long walk through the woods, I turned my phone back on for the first time in weeks. Not because I wanted her back, but because I wanted to see how far she had moved on without me. Hundreds of missed messages poured in like a dam breaking. Texts, voicemails, even emails. Some short, some frantic, some cold and punishing. Apologies written at 2 a.m. Accusations at 4 p.m. Promises at midnight. It was like watching a drowning person refuse to grab the life preserver they were offered years ago. I didn't open most of them, except one. One voicemail, left about 3 days after I left town. Her voice was thin, shaking. Calven, I didn't know how empty the house would feel without you. I didn't know how loud the silence could get. I thought I needed excitement, adventure. I thought you were holding me back. But you were the only thing keeping me standing. I don't even recognize myself anymore. There it was. The truth, finally. Not about me. About her. She wasn't mourning the man she betrayed. She was mourning the version of herself that looked stable when she stood next to me. Without me, she couldn't hide the cracks anymore. I deleted the voicemail without finishing it. Not out of anger. Not out of cruelty. Out of love for myself, finally. I turned the phone off again and tossed it into the lake without ceremony. Watched the ripples spread wider and wider until the water swallowed the last of that life hole. I stayed there, sitting on the rocky shore until the stars came out. Until the chill in the air made my fingers stiff and my lungs ache. And as the night wrapped around me like a dark, honest blanket, I finally understood. She lost me long before I ever packed a bag. She lost me the first time she made me feel small for loving her too much. She lost me the moment she decided loyalty was boring. And I finally lost the version of myself that believed being chosen by someone like her was a prize. No more stages. No more performances. No more apologizing for being the kind of man who still believes in staying when things get hard. I didn't need to be anyone's home anymore. I was building one inside myself. And for the first time in years, it was a place I actually wanted to live. Spring came quietly to Fair Hollow. The lake thawed. The trees woke up with soft green whispers. Life stirred back into the earth without needing permission, without demanding anything in return. It just happened. Naturally. Steadily. Like healing. I found a rhythm I didn't know I was capable of. Morning walks to the diner where Lester always saved me a seat by the window. Afternoons spent repairing the old dock by the cabin, my hands raw and sore in the best way. Evenings reading under the soft, amber light of a second-hand lamp I bought from a thrift store for $5. I didn't just survive. I started living. It wasn't dramatic. No soaring speeches. No cinematic transformations. Just 1,000 small choices stacked quietly on top of each other. Choosing to stay kind. Choosing to stay hopeful. Choosing to believe that what broke me didn't have to define me. One afternoon, as I hammered the last plank into the dock, Lester wandered by with 2 mugs of coffee. He sat beside me, his knees creaking like old floorboards. "You're different now," he said without looking at me. I smiled, tightening the last nail. "Maybe I'm just me again." He nodded like that was the only answer he needed. Later that night, I sat by the lake, watching the water catch the last fire of the sunset. I thought about the man who once lived only to be loved. The man who thought he had to earn his place in someone else's heart by being small enough to fit. I said goodbye to him in my mind, not with anger, but with gratitude. He had kept me going when I didn't know any better. He had loved deeply, even if it hurt. But I didn't need to be him anymore. I didn't need to prove my worth to someone who couldn't even see it. Somewhere out there, I imagined Dahlia still spinning stories, still trying to find someone to prop her up. Maybe she told herself I abandoned her. Maybe she painted herself as the hero in her own version of events. It didn't matter. I wasn't a chapter in her story anymore. I was writing my own book now, page after page filled with peace, freedom, and quiet victories no one else needed to applaud. I built a small life with my own 2 hands. I learned how to sit in a room alone and feel whole. I learned that real love, the kind that lasts, doesn't start with someone else choosing you. It starts with you choosing yourself. As the stars stitched themselves across the black velvet of the sky, I pulled the old wool blanket tighter around my shoulders, breathed in the clean night air, and smiled. Not because everything was perfect, but because I was finally free to be imperfect, and that, after everything, was enough. I wasn't lost anymore. I was already home, and I wasn't waiting for anyone to find me.